Well, the Sundance Film Festival is going on right now, and while I'm not there, far too expensive for this guy, I was able to see two films playing there at the New York Film Festival a couple months ago. Those two films being the romantic comedy Maggie's Plan and the Don Cheadle directed Indiegogo funded music biopic Miles Ahead. And today we are going to review both of these films, starting with Maggie's Plan. Maggie's Plan is directed by Rebecca Miller, although I swear it feels like it was directed by Noah Baumbach, but I digress. It stars Greta Gerwig as a girl trying to make it in New York City. She wants to create her own happiness and is ready to have a baby, and is about to do it before things get very complicated when she falls for a married professor played by Ethan Hawke. Now that's all I'm going to say about the plot, because to say any more would ruin the fun surprises of this film. Now after hearing that plot, you may think this is just your typical romantic comedy, but Maggie's Plan doesn't do that. It doesn't stay constrained to the genre it's in. It threw a curveball at me that I was not expecting. After the first 20 minutes, I was ready to write off Maggie's Plan as a forgettable rom-com. But then it goes someplace that caught me off guard. Rebecca Miller changes things up from the norm and creates a really refreshing movie to watch. The film perfectly hammers home the point that you may have a plan for what you want to do with your life, but sometimes life might have other ideas and send you on this whole other path. It's just so much fun to watch a film that's about the unpredictability of life, and that's what makes Maggie's Plan a cut above the rest. Greta Gerwig, I think, once again shows that she is really able to carry a movie all by herself. She really is at her best when she's in these witty and quirky comedies, and that's really put on display here in Maggie's Plan. A real testament to Gerwig as the leading lady in this film is that I'm watching this movie, and I want to say to her character, I don't support any of the decisions you're making, but I'm still gonna support you. This lady is making some really bad decisions in this movie, but you still kinda like her because it's Greta Gerwig. And that's the same thing when it comes to Ethan Hawke's character too, because when you really think about it, he's not a good person, but you still kinda like him because he's Ethan Hawke. And then you have Julianne Moore, who's really doing something different from what she usually does. She has this absurdly kooky and unidentifiable foreign accent in this film. I think it's Russian, but people say it's Danish. I think part of the fun of this movie is trying to figure out what Julianne Moore's accent is. She's given a pretty out there performance in this movie, but I was kinda on board for it. If you're able to tolerate just how bizarre Julianne Moore will be in this movie, you'll probably like Maggie's Plan. So overall, I would recommend Maggie's Plan to you because it's a very unique addition to the rom-com genre and really goes places you don't expect it to. There were a lot of times where the comedy just didn't hit for me, but there's enough fascinating stuff going on that really held my attention. Maggie's Plan is good, not great, but the good is that it's tightly written, it's smart, it's refreshing, and it's unpredictable in a very fun way. And now let's move on to our second film we're going to review today, Miles Ahead, the biopic about the famous jazz trumpeter Miles Davis. Miles Ahead is the directorial debut of Don Cheadle, and he also stars as Miles Davis. I will always be fascinated by a film where an actor decides to take the transition to the director's chair. But I was really fascinated by Miles Ahead because if you look up any interviews with Don Cheadle about this movie, he has this immense respect for Miles Davis and really wanted to honor that man with this film. It's great to see just sheer love of telling a story ooze off the screen, and that's what you get with Miles Ahead. And I could tell by watching this film that Don Cheadle put a lot of passion into his directing. Don Cheadle showed a lot of promise as a director in this film. He really was able to inject his own style into it, and also does a lot of things visually interesting as well. I was really digging a lot of the artistic choices that Don Cheadle was doing here. He really showed a lot of poise in his directing with this film, and I would be very fascinated to see what he does next. A big thing to know with Miles Ahead is the fact that it's told in a dual narrative, much like another music biopic from last year, Love and Mercy. Much like Love and Mercy, it bounces back and forth between a story of when Miles Davis was young and one where he's older. What Love and Mercy did so well with its dual narrative is the fact that both stories were really fascinating, and you were really happy watching the one you were now, but were also excited to see where we were going with the other story as well. I don't think that's the case with Miles Ahead. The one story you have is of an older Miles Davis who's been out of music for 5 years, no one knows what he's been doing, and some of his music gets stolen by his record label, so he teams up with a reporter played by Ewan McGregor. Now this was the story that I liked more over the other one for many reasons. First off, the character Miles Davis in this story is a lot more complex because he's been through some stuff, he's more experienced. He's been chewed up by fame and spit out, and you get to see those results. Also, you have this really fun dynamic between Miles Davis and the reporter played by Ewan McGregor. Those two are a really odd pairing, but the results are wacky and fun at the same time. And near the end of this story, it gets this vibe of like a 70s buddy cop show or something. Things just get really wacky when you have this odd pairing and they need to find this music that's been stolen. It was a weird tone that story was going with for a while, but I kind of liked it. But the film was really weighed down by the other story when Miles Davis was younger and the relationship he has with this girl. The movie really slows down when we go back to this story, and it's just really dull and boring. It just doesn't go anywhere. We just don't get any insight into this relationship at all, and it just had me wishing we could go back to the story of the older Miles Davis. And so in that, you have a film that's pretty uneven, as you have the one story which is a lot of fun to watch and the other which just really isn't that fascinating. I just wish the story with the younger Miles Davis and his relationship with this girl just had like a little more energy to it, you know? And the last thing I want to touch on with this film is the fact that Don Cheadle, acting-wise, is giving career work. He just really embodies that swagger, that rock star attitude that Miles Davis had, and he also nails the raspy voice that he was known for. He really got lost in the character both at the younger Miles Davis and the older Miles Davis. It's just really top-notch acting. So overall, Miles Ahead is a decent music biopic that has a very strong first effort from Don Cheadle behind the camera. Cheadle is giving fantastic work here, and you will be pleasantly entertained by the story of the older Miles Davis trying to get his music back with Ewan McGregor. But it's just that other story in the dual narrative that just doesn't work. But it's still a well-crafted, loose, and fun film that really represents the music and the art of Miles Davis. So there you have it. Those are my reviews for Maggie's Plan and Miles Ahead. I believe that Maggie's Plan will be released on May 20th, and Miles Ahead will be released on April 1st. Make sure to comment below, hit that subscribe button, hit me up on Twitter, on my website, BrendanHasAblog.wordpress.com. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, I'm Brendan Weissman. Peace! Another thing I want to add about Maggie's Plan that I forgot to do in my review is how much I love the ending of this film, because when you really think about where these characters were at the beginning of the film and how they ended up at the end is actually really hilarious to think about. I think how things really became full circle in the film was another clever joke that was added by Rebecca Miller. So yeah, that's all I need to say. Peace!